Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here and to learn more about Well Rooted. So, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
I'm happy to be here.
Let's get right into it. So, you and your co founder, Katie, have known each other for a long time. So, can you tell us about how your friendship and common experiences as foster parents sort of led into Well Rooted? And what is it exactly that inspired you to both start Well Rooted? Was it like a moment or an experience that really pushed you to take action?
Yeah, so our history goes way back, probably actually to our husbands. They met in kindergarten. The four of us graduated from Delaware County Christian School in Newtown Square. And then I came in a little bit later. I'm a little younger than them. So I became friends with her as an adult. We've been friends for a long time. And then we are obviously business partners now. And we also share biological children. So we've both adopted siblings of each other. So we're all kind of this weird mishmash family, but it works really well together. And so our journey kind of started with Well Rooted end of 2019, early 2020. Katie had been fostering for several years. My husband and I decided that we wanted to adopt through the foster system. Anyone who's in the foster system listening to this will realize that everything I'm saying sounds incredibly naive, and it was. But Katie knew of a child that was likely going up for adoption, a baby. Mom was pregnant. And so we decided we wanted to pursue that. And so we got licensed to foster. She was born late February 2020. And as we all know, the world shut down mid-March 2020, so 2 weeks after she was born. We weren't quite licensed at that point. So she went home to live with Katie, and what was supposed to be a few weeks turned into 20 months. We have now adopted her, but we became licensed several months later. Everything was slowed down because of COVID. And we knew that we wanted to keep our home open for her. We had this license, but the courts were saying she couldn't come. So we thought, we have a license. We really need to help other kids. There's other kids in the system. We can't do anything long term because we really want to hold that place for her. But let's do anything short term. We can give other foster families a break, do respite. So we had 2 cases that came, each for a week. One was a little boy. He was 2, and he was great. And the foster care system is full of trauma. And I later learned that he was great, but his trauma response was being great. It was being agreeable and assimilating to the situation that he was in. And so he slept through the night, and he was, to everyone else, your average 2-year-old who had been through quite a bit. So we thought, great, this is easy. We can do this. So our next set was a sibling set of girls, ages 2 and 4. And I didn't know their full story, but I knew that they had been through a lot, and probably I've learned everything that you could imagine they had been through. So they came to our home, and it was easily the hardest week of my life. Hard for me, but I can't even imagine what they had been through for the past 2 to 4 years. So they came, they did not sleep more than 2 to 3 hours a night, which meant I did not sleep more than 2 to 3 hours a night. They had feeding issues, so the 2-year-old would eat until she was sick, and the 4-year-old would take one bite and leave it because she didn't know if it was going to be there. That we had an instance where we got groceries, and that we had a baguette, and the 2-year-old grabbed the baguette and just started devouring it. And my husband literally had to wrestle it out of her hands. And my husband and I do not have a background in anything with children, and we felt so unequipped in this week. We had to do parental visitation. We later learned that they were exhibiting sexual behaviors and weren't supposed to be in a home with a boy. And I have a son. So my husband, who never takes off of work, took off for the rest of the week to make sure one of us could be with our son. So by the end of that week, I had not slept. I was broken. And I mean that in every sense of the word. I was a broken person. And so here I was, and I knew I was only going to have them for a week. And they were going to somebody else who was willingly saying, I'm going to do this long term. And my situation with them was not unique. And so I looked at Katie and I said, is this what you've been doing? I mean, I've seen the babies that have come into her home, and I've maybe brought meals, but I did not see this part of it. And we're very close. And so she said, yeah, this is what foster care is. So at that point, we said, well, why don't we bring meals to local families just so that they can be seen, just so we can say, like, we know this is hard. It's a small gesture, but in that moment, I needed to just say, this is hard, and I don't want to do this. And even though the kids need help and the foster parents need to be there, there are moments where they're saying, I don't want to do this. And so just being able to say that to someone maybe gets you to the next day. And I've since learned about 50% of foster families quit within the first year, an additional 25% in the second year. And I saw very clearly why that week. It's actually really hard for me to talk about now, even 5 years later, because I was so broken at the end of it. So we started working with the organization Fostering Hope Delco. Fostering Hope has several different chapters, but we specifically worked with Delaware County. And so we just brought meals to their families. They provide tangibles to foster and adoptive families. And they just gave us names, and we brought a meal in a time of transition. So if they got a new placement, we just said, we see you. So we started doing that, and then through them, we also met Reunifying families who deal with similar things, but on a much larger scale. Your kids don't go into the system because you had a ton of support before. So the kids come home and there's no support. And kids have been away. And so it's a huge transition for kids to come home. We think, oh, what a happy thing. And it is a happy thing. But it's hard. It's really hard for parents who now overnight have become 24-hour parents and kids who are somewhere else. And now they're coming home and there's different rules and there's feelings that maybe they don't know how to express. And so we also do the same thing for reunifying families. And then through Fostering Hope, we also met young adults aging out. So they had asked me one time to see if I could provide a fridge to a young adult. In Pennsylvania, with the exception of Philadelphia, landlords do not have to provide appliances. So this young adult was in an apartment with no fridge, and it was affecting his ability to eat. So I went on Facebook, I found the biggest mini fridge that I could find, and I brought it to him, and I walked in, and he had nothing. And I tell people, not even a box, because there was nothing to put in that box. And so Fostering Hope had provided a bed. He had a foster mom who had provided like one plate, one spoon. Other than that, nothing. So I saw that, and I said, here's this guy who's, say, 20, and he's supposed to go get a job, do all the adult responsibilities, and come home and sit on the floor, and then do that all again. And he can't even eat a proper meal because he can't keep it cold. So I said to him, I was like, give me a couple days. I'm going to see what I can do. So ironically enough, we had lent a TV to one of our friends, and he came that day and returned it, and he came in a U-Haul. And I said, why are you in a U-Haul? And he's like, well, I'm getting my car fixed. It's actually cheaper to get a U-Haul than it is to rent a car. So I was like, okay, that's odd but smart. And so I put on Facebook that I had this guy. Does anybody have any stuff they can donate? And so I had another friend call, and he said, I actually am flipping a house, and the prior owners left everything in it, and I need to unload it. So I called my friend with the U-Haul, and I said, meet me over at that house. And this guy got everything. I mean, it was an estate of an attorney, so really nice things. And everything was left. And so he got a couch, a TV, towels. I mean, anything you could imagine, cleaning supplies, he was able to get in that day. And so that affected his ability to move on. And he really couldn't understand why people were stepping in. I didn't have to help him. I could have gone about my life and just said, see you later. But you can't walk into that and then just leave. So it was also interesting to see that we were confusing to him, that he didn't have people in his life that would say, you know what, let me see what I could do. And I didn't think I could get a U-Haul full of stuff. I was hoping maybe I could get a couple pieces of furniture, some cleaning supplies to make his life more comfortable. So through that, we really got to see the lack of support that young adults have. And I've later learned that there's a study through Harvard that says even just one valuable relationship in someone's life can change the trajectory of their life. So at that point, we really said, these people need a point person. When I was that age, I call my mom. How do I do this? How do I get an oil change? How do I cook chicken? All the mundane things of life, let alone, I don't know what I want to do with my life. how do I buy a car? I have this relationship that I don't know what to do with, and they have no one to bounce that off of. So we've started a 1-year mentorship program for them. And then we started that through Fostering Hope, and then we went off on our own after that. So that's really how we started and why we started, and it was a lot of different factors. But really the culmination of all of that really spurred us to start Well Rooted.
Unbelievable. That, first of all, just going back to that week, as you explain that, and I think about being just, a young mother to my own babies and how incredibly intense those moments we had, but you at least have this sense of I've known this child since they got here, right? But when these two young children come to you, and as you said, they've had all this trauma that you know about, but maybe don't know as deeply as it could be, and all of those challenges that come along with it, I think people really do not understand. I mean, I don't think I understood until you just explained it, that is what you're signing up for sometimes in the foster system, and how heartbreaking that is for these children, but then how challenging it is for those who want to help to have the ability to even take that on. So I love that it turned into you reaching out to other groups to figure out how you could help people in similar circumstances, and just how Well Rooted came to be. It's awesome that it's connected through you and your friend, and you both having these similar experiences, and seeing it sounds like the needs within this foster community, especially the young adults. I don't think that's anything I've ever thought of, is anyone that goes through the foster system and then you become a young adult and you don't have any sort of support. How do you navigate? So that's amazing that you're taking up these initiatives to make sure that they have that support. So can you tell us, maybe in a nutshell, exactly how Well Rooted supports families and young adults? Like, what are your core focuses within the organization?
Yeah, so overall, our goal is relationship. So for our foster families and our reunifying families, we provide them with a volunteer for 2 to 4 weeks, and that person is to bring a meal at least once a week, check in, bring a coffee during a sleepless night, check in to see if they need anything at the grocery store. We try to make people close so that it can be an easy relationship, not only to support the foster family or reunifying family, but to also give people a view into what it is like, what the reality is. And then we also hold a support group in Delaware County for foster, kinship, and adoptive moms. We do that once a month. And then for our young adults, we have a 1-year mentorship program. We provide them with a mentor. Again, we hope that's geographically close. And our hope is that they create community within that relationship. Our ideal is that mentor would invite them over for holidays, and really let them know their family. But at a minimum, we ask that they reach out once a week and meet in person once a month. And then on the back end, we work with the young adult. We meet any immediate needs. That often looks like food, transportation, cell phones. Really, what do you need right now is what we ask. And then monthly, we provide a little bit of a gift card for food and transportation. That seems to be a pretty consistent need for them. We will provide mental health counseling. We contract with someone to do that if they want to partake. A lot of times in foster care, they have to do therapy, and so they don't want to do that after. But we will pay for that. We will do rent assist, so that sometimes looks like either paying the move-in costs. A lot of times they can pay the monthly rent, but they don't have thousands of dollars up front. So we'll pay that if they're behind in rent and they just need to catch up a little bit. We'll do 1 month and then 2 months at 50-50. And then we work with them to make sure that fourth month can fully get paid. And then we'll also do, if we have paid for hotel stays. So we just had a young adult who was re-entering the system. You can stay in the system up until you're 23. Services start to diminish a little bit, but there is some there. So she was re-entering, but needed 2 weeks before her foster home would be ready. So we paid for her to be in a hotel. Otherwise, she would have been on the street, which is not uncommon. Through all this, I've learned about 25% of foster youth immediately become homeless upon aging out. And it is a huge problem. I mean, we deal with this on a daily basis. So we will assist with that as long as we're moving towards something. We really try to keep a mindset of we're not going to Band-Aid things. We really want it to fill a gap. So we'll do that. We have what's called wish list items. So a lot of times when you grow up in the foster system, you don't get to experience what traditional upbringing will bring you. So we'll pay for soccer lessons, or if someone wants to learn how to play the guitar. We just paid for somebody to take a sewing class. And even we paid for someone to go to an amusement park. She had never been to that, and that was on her bucket list. And we thought, well, that's just an essential childhood experience. So we sent her to Six Flags. And I'm missing one.
It's amazing, all of the things that you are, it seems like, really filling in these needs that maybe overall the system is not catching. And that was going to be my next question. So what are some of the biggest challenges foster families face that people outside the system might not realize? So from your perspective, where does the foster care system fall short in supporting families and children? It sounds like you're totally dialed into that. And how are you helping to address those gaps?
Yeah, I think just doing what they're being asked to do is the hardest part. It's just the job. And there's not anything really you can change about that part of it. To give people an idea, when you have a child come into your home, you could have 20 minutes, you could have days, you could have weeks notice. They enter your home, and I'll use a case of, let's say you got a call and they're coming in an hour. They come into your home, you have to bathe them. You may have no idea where they came from. The Child and Youth Services may have gotten a call, removed them from the home, and taken them to your home. So there's not a lot of time in between that to learn likes, dislikes, health issues, food allergies, what services do they need, all that kind of stuff. So the foster parent has to take them, learn all of that. They have to go to the doctor within 3 days. They're probably going to go to court within a few days. The foster parent has to attend that. They will then start having visits from caseworkers. I'll say for myself, I have the county worker in my house once a month. I have our agency worker twice a month. We have what's called a CASA, which is a court-appointed special advocate, which is a volunteer that represents the child. They come once a month. And then anything they're asked to do, I learned very quickly that my schedule is not my own. If there's parental visitation, they often are transporting to that. My foster daughter had it 3 times a week for 2 hours. So you're going, you're waiting, and you're going home.
Wow. So that's on you. You are transporting the child.
Oftentimes. Sometimes the county will, or the facility that's facilitating the visit. But as a foster parent, you sign up for that. You agree to that. You know that that's a part of the deal.
Wow.
And anything else that you had on your schedule that week, you have to rearrange. You have to rearrange other kids in the home. So just doing the job is probably the hardest part. Where the system is lacking is definitely the support. And the system is not built for that. The system is to manage the child. I wouldn't even say the system is really supporting the child, but they're managing the child. They're making sure they're safe. And trying to do the best they can, that if they are reunified, that they go home to a safe situation. But there is no support for foster parents. It's just not built to be that way.
And that's really at the heart of Well-Rooted's mission, I gather, is to be that support because it just doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, and you can't do it on your own. Yeah. People sign up to do it, but we don't want anyone to sign up to do it on their own. When people do have a child, to step in and bring meals and maybe go and clean. And it's not fully like that in the foster system. Certainly there is that. There are people that step in and bring a meal, and that goes away, but a lot of times the disadvantages do not go away. When it's your own child, I have 2 biological children of my own. I know that doesn't always get easier either. But I have 2 kids from the system, and their challenges are just different. Typically, children within the system need more services. There's more trauma. There's more delays. So it's just a lot, and there's a lot of behaviors that go along with that are formed because of trauma. They've been removed from their home, and that foster parent is saying, I'm welcoming you and your trauma into my home. and we're going to do this together. But it's hard. It's really, really hard. So, I mean, we have people that come to our support group and they're like, I just need to hear that other people are doing this and that I'm not alone. Because we're not all doing it together. I mean, when people hear I'm a foster family or a foster parent, they're a little shocked because we don't know a lot of them. So when we can all connect with each other, it lightens the burden. And that's our goal, just to lighten the burden.
And I'm sure there's so much value in just being able to be allowed to safely say, this is really hard. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think we do enough of that in general, like in parenting, have safe spaces where you can say this is really hard. But I would imagine especially in the foster situation that you've decided to open your home to what you know is going to be disruptive to your family's normal, way of being. And that you're choosing to do that out of like the compassion and love you have for the idea of fostering these children and helping them. But that doesn't mean that it's easy. And I think it's great that you offer these opportunities for people to come and just feel like they can get that off their chest. And I was going to ask too, that the fostering doesn't just affect you as the parent or the traumatized child that's coming to you. It affects the entire family. So how would you say that, being a foster family and having, and let's talk about the pros and the cons. Like, what are the things that you would say, or how are the ways that it affects the entire family, the other children, your biological children, also grandparents, cousins, it affects your entire ecosystem. What would you say are the pros and cons?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Katie and I both have very supportive systems around us. It is always an adjustment for children. One, you don't know this is a stranger coming into your home. What are their likes? What are their dislikes? Sometimes there's wild behaviors. How are we supposed to read that? That can be a little scary for kids. And for the foster child coming into the home, they've now left their whole environment. So they're coming into probably a new culture, new foods. You have different shows on the TV. There's different sounds. Everything they knew just went away. Even if it's a nice environment to you, it's very scary to them. So I think other kids can pick up on that. And the whole environment of the home just shifted. And it doesn't mean it's worse, but it shifted. And so that's a transition. So I think for the hard, that's what it is you need to learn this new person. You need to learn their behaviors. What is the new environment in your home? And that's for everyone in the home, children, parents. I think the good is my kids have built a lot of compassion. I did not do that on purpose. I think it kind of just comes with it. I would say Katie's kids as well. I hear about things they've done, or I can see the way they react to things, and I'm impressed by it. And I think, well, that did not come from me, but I know it came from the people that have been in our home and the people that we've met. And we have the young adults in our home, and we meet other foster families. And so I think they have a broader view of the world than maybe they would have without this. Mm-hmm. And I think they will be better adults because of it. I know some people say, well, I don't want to do that to my kids. And you certainly have to protect your kids. I mean, that is of utmost importance. But they can grow as people because of it. And so I would say that is the good. I have heard other people say their extended family doesn't understand why they're doing this. Maybe they're afraid of the child and they don't want that child around their children. I have had relatives that, am I allowed to be with this child? What are the rules? And so luckily in Pennsylvania, anyone that you deem safe can be with the child. If it's for an extended period of time, there's rules around that. But if I need a babysitter for the night, anyone that I deem safe can come in and babysit them. But it's definitely an adjustment for everyone in your life because it's not quote unquote normal. And so everybody has to adjust that, neighbors, extended family, and people within the home.
But to your point, I think that that's actually a positive for everybody involved, that you have to learn how to just navigate and embrace someone who's different and new to your family, and that you get more compassion, I think, out of that experience. And I didn't mean to say pros versus cons, because I like how you framed it. It's just kind of like the good and the hard, right?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
That it's not necessarily, these aren't things that are like, a negative and should deter you from being a foster parent. It's more just the reality of this is hard, right? But there's all these positives that come from it, not just for you as the foster parent, but also for your children and for your extended family. I think it fosters acceptance and a greater understanding of community for your kids too, to understand that I am opening my arms to somebody who wasn't biologically a part of my family, but look at this example my parents are giving me, is that we should have these young adults over our house. We should have these children who need our help from time to time here. I see that there's probably a lot of valuable things that come from that, but I also deeply understand what you're saying, that it's probably incredibly challenging too. So can you share a story for us about a young adult that was touched by well-rooted support? I know you gave the example of the fridge. Do you have any other examples of young people that you've been able to help?
Yeah, we have quite a few. So we have monthly dinners with our young adults, and I think that has been a really valuable time to create community. So we get a lot of feedback there. And we have one young man who really loves basketball, and there's a gym where we hold them. And he said, I just get to bring out my inner child here. And their lives are really hard. They're on their own. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of unknowns. There's lacking of a lot of things: money, time, housing. I mean, just food, everything. So to be able to come somewhere for a couple hours and just to forget about all that, that meant a lot that he said that, because it's like, I know when my life's hard, it's hard for me to turn that off and to stop thinking about it. But it's such a gift to be able to give any sort of reprieve. So he had said that. There's a video on our website with a young woman named Anaya, and she's a single mom. She was both one of our reunifying families and our young adults. And she just said, Well Rooted has given her a broader view of life. We have not given her a lot of stuff. We have not paid for a ton. But she had a very narrow view of what she could do in the world. And she said that really opened up. So just being able to talk to different people and say, you know what, you have had limited resources, but that does not mean the future is limited. So those are a couple of examples, and it's always great to hear that it's not necessarily like you gave me this, or now I have, I mean, we don't provide a ton of tangibles, but like now I can eat. We do provide that, which is obviously, that's a basic human need. That's great to provide. But to be able to say, oh no, your mindset has shifted and now your future could look completely different. These kids are late teens, early 20s, and hopefully by the time they're 50, their life could be in a totally different place than maybe it would have been, simply because somebody sat down with them and said, oh, you seem like you're really good at this thing. Why don't you pursue that? Yeah. And then they do. And they're given the motivation to do that and think, okay, I can do things. I don't have to scramble, and I can have a plan. And maybe sometimes going far takes time. So it's okay that I'm not there right now. But if I can take baby steps to get there, and I have these people behind me to do that, then it's okay. So that's the best feedback we can get.
Absolutely. And it kind of ties back to when you were saying how these young adults don't have an adult in their life that can, when we were in our young 20s, I had plenty of those conversations with my parents of, whatever my mindset was and not being able to see the future, right? And your parents are there to say, oh, well, no, like this is it's hard at this point, or these things you have to overcome, but think about what you could do. Or a parent that's there to say, you're really good at these things. That's incredible that you're able to give them that they would not be able to get elsewhere. And just instilling that sense of community and giving them the relationships that they otherwise would not have access to. That's great feedback too. I mean, those are really great examples of the ways that it's working, it's helping. The intention that you have is clearly coming through. And what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about foster children or foster parents that you wish you could change?
I honestly don't know what people's conceptions are of them. I think that there may be people that might be afraid. I've found that anything hard in life, the reason people are not doing it is because they're afraid. And so I would say maybe people are afraid of the kids and assume that they have behavioral issues. And Although that can certainly be true, I don't think that's the vast majority. And at the root of it, we all just want to be liked and accepted. And maybe some of them need a little more help, but they're no different than our kids that were biologically born. So I think really just accepting them and rallying around them, and not looking at them as different. I have an adopted daughter, and she's in kindergarten now, and I struggle with when do I tell people her past and when not, don't I? Because I don't want people to look at her and say, oh, that's the girl that was adopted through the foster system. But she was, and so it's relevant in some of her behaviors or the way she learns stem from that. And so I do have to share that information, but I never want anyone to look at her different. And as far as foster families, I would say the only negative thing I've heard about them is that they do it for the money. And so I would say, again, there's always the exception to the rule, but that would, to me, seems crazy because you get very, very little. And it is a 24-hour-a-day job, and it is hard, and you lose a lot. And I can't imagine. I mean, I would pay to take some of the things away that I've had to deal with. So I would say that is absolutely not the case. I hear a lot that people say they couldn't do it. And foster families are not different than anybody else. They just chose to say yes. So when people look at a foster family and say, oh, they're different than I am, they're not. They just said yes. They just agreed to do some really hard things. And like as we're talking, I see a sticker all the time with my kids that says, you can do hard things.
It's one of my favorite quotes ever.
Yeah, and we can do hard things. You just have to say that yes, whether it's to the foster system or other things in your life. So I think that is probably, people maybe put foster families not on a pedestal, but just say they're different, and they're not. They just said, I can do this hard thing, and they chose to say yes, and they stepped into it, and they did it.
And you could too. That
Absolutely.
Anybody could.
Yeah, and that you can do, well, I think you're going to get to this, but people don't have to be a foster family to get engaged in the foster system.
Go ahead and tell us, because this was going to be my next question is, how can the community support even if you don't feel like you can take that on, but you feel called or pulled to help support these foster children? How can people get involved?
Yeah, if we were all foster families, there'd be huge gaps. So there's a lot that people can do. You can be a foster family. And you can, even if you choose to be a foster family, you can do short-term placements. You don't have to say yes to somebody for years. And you can do the weekend. You can give a foster family a break when they need it, or they go on vacation and can't bring the child. There's a lot of kids that are in between homes, or they get a call at 3 a.m. and the county just needs a day or two to find something permanent. So it's not all or nothing. You can do a little bit, and you get to choose what you want to do. You can always say no if it doesn't fit into your life or your family. There's also other organizations. So if you want to go Fold Clothes for Fostering Hope, you can go Fold Clothes. You can become a CASA, which is a volunteer position. You meet with the child, and you go into the courts and you advocate for them. And that's through the organization CASA. And then for us, you can volunteer as a mentor or to support a foster family. So for our foster families, that's 2 to 4 weeks of a commitment. And then we always ask people if they want to do it again, or if they want to lengthen that with the family. Sometimes people get to meet families and really build a relationship, and that goes outside of Well-Rooted. And then they can support that family forever, or the length of that placement. And then for our mentors, that's a 1-year commitment. And we just ask people that step in and be that adult in the young adult's life, be that point person. You're just trying to walk alongside them as they figure out life. We really make sure people understand that this isn't telling them how to do life. It's really, what do you want to do with your life, and how can I help you get there? Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to support people. I just was listening to another podcast, and a foster family said somebody comes and folds their laundry every week. So simple things like that. It just really, whatever you can do, there is a place for it.
And it's probably a great idea to dabble in some of these things if you're thinking of becoming a foster parent. But you're like nervous and apprehensive about it. Maybe just introducing yourself to the foster community and helping support other families will give you a look into, what it could be like and maybe just get you a little more comfortable with the concept. But I think it's awesome that there's so many different opportunities and ways that people can support. And this conversation is really important because there's so much of what you've said I did not know. But I think it's just because I've never really known somebody close who's fostered any children, and I don't know anything about the foster system on the whole. So it's awesome that you're giving us this insight, and I think just helping us to think about it a little differently. You're right. One of the common misconceptions, I think, is that people do it for the money. And it really has always hurt my heart to hear that, even though I don't know about a lot about fostering. But as you said, I've always thought, there's no way you're doing this for the money. Like that sounds like a really hard thing to take on. And to just say that you're motivated by money sounds pretty ridiculous. So I'm glad you sort of debunked that.
Yeah, I mean, the government's involved, so there's not going to be a lot of money.
Yeah, it's just, I mean,
it's not a way to get rich.
It's like silly. Are there changes you'd like to see at like the county or state level that would better support foster families? You know, Well-Rooted's coming in now and giving this great support, which is awesome, but I'm sure you'd like to see more of that and statewide. Are there ways that you think that could be better supported?
Yeah, I think just connecting other foster families in the area and acknowledging that they are taking on something that is very hard and supporting them in that and saying, what can we do about that? I think that we are not given much of a voice in the system. We do the job, and then we're kind of told to be quiet. So I think being able to go into court and even saying, like, you have value, I think that would allow someone to continue fostering. Because I think we, as foster families, we step in and we see all the injustices, and I think that's why a lot of people leave. So to at least have a voice in that. And I'll add that I've had a lot of caseworkers in my house, and they're genuinely really great people. It's just the system is a bunch of rules, and so they're tied to that. But I'd say by giving us more of a voice, that really is what I think would make a significant impact, not only for foster families, but also in the case. I mean, we're with the child 24 hours a day. We're navigating the parental relationship. I know a lot of foster families really want to support the biological families. So they're helping them find housing and what are you doing to get clean and, you know, all the things. And so they're hearing how hard it is the child's not with their parent, or maybe the behaviors of the parent are hurting the child, or, you know, all those things. So to be able to go into court and say, I actually have all the pieces of the puzzle here. Let me just tell you what's going on. And you make the decision because you're the courts. But I think you also need to hear what I have to say.
Oh, 100%. I think that there's so much value to that. And yeah, I hope it moves in that direction. So where do you see Well-Rooted in the next 5 years? And how do you hope to expand your impact?
Well, we started out in just Delaware County. We are about to celebrate, or maybe by the time this comes out, we'll have celebrated our 3-year anniversary.
Awesome.
So we're new. And we started out just Delaware County, and we're now Philadelphia and all surrounding counties. So in the next 5 years, we really want to hone what we're doing. We really want to grow the programs. And ideally, in 5 years, we are in a few more counties. I know our dream is to go statewide. So I would love to see us a little bit closer to that big goal. We've done so much in 3 years that I feel like 5 years we could be so much further than we are now. We're very, very excited to see that.
It's amazing. And how can people best support Well-Rooted? You know, even if, say, we don't want to get involved and volunteer to be an advocate or a support system or helping in the ways that you did, you know, already tell us. How could someone just support your ongoing mission because they care about it? And how can we follow along with Well-Rooted's work as well?
Yeah, we mainly need people and funding. Unfortunately, it is not free to run this. It is quite expensive. So if people feel led to provide that way, we need that. We need volunteers for both mentors and families. Simply just sharing our message and telling other people about us, sharing us on social media, that's huge. You never know whose eyes that's going to reach. And we are on Facebook and Instagram. Our handle is @WellRootedPA. And all of this can also be found on our website, wellrootedpa.org.
Awesome. Well, we will make sure to link all of that in our show notes. And I would absolutely recommend everybody do what you can to help support your mission. I really appreciate you bringing this conversation to our audience because, like I said, I knew really nothing about the foster system, and maybe all that I knew was probably not even fact. That's. I think it's just so important that we have these conversations so that it opens our eyes, changes our mindset, maybe creates some more compassion for people who are choosing to be foster families and for the children that they're supporting, and hopefully inspires people to want to get involved themselves. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I'm really grateful for the opportunity.